about the closedown steps, things that you need to consider and think about as we are closing the window. So here's some important information. Certainly you know by now, hopefully, that all student assessment data must be entered by 11:59 p.m. on May the 14th. That's when the window closes for teacher entry of student data. So it's important that you make sure that the teachers that you're working with in your districts and your locations, that they know that that window is going to close. That opportunity to enter data into the system will close on May 14th at 11:59 p.m. Prior to that, we certainly want data managers to be working in this area of cleaning up the data related to the student file, that teacher information that's been entered. There may be some changes that have occurred since you've entered that information since February, or any kind of enrollment updates that need to be made so that the data is as clean as possible. We definitely want you to make sure that you initiate and or approve any transfer requests that need to occur. Please make sure that you're communicating with other districts that have either sent a request your way or may be waiting for you to approve a transfer request. So it's important that you are taking care of those things, obviously, prior to that May 14th date. And then we are encouraging you to download those desired reports. We mentioned this when we did the data prep and loading webinar back in February. We want you to make sure that you are in the system and you are downloading reports so that archives can be created. If you don't do that and that window closes, then you won't have a kind of a recap. You won't be able to go back and see those data. And so we're encouraging you to go into the system even today. You can download a report today. You can go back in tomorrow and download another report. But we want you to make sure that you are creating this archive by having activity in the system. And then lastly here, we want data managers to be aware that you will have until May 20th, 11:59 p.m. on that day to kind of complete any data cleanup that you are doing and that you're taking care of. As you know, there's the need to do data cleanup. That's always the case. Again, there are changes and there are things that occur either with teachers or with students. Relative to that, there are some points that we want you to be aware of and that you take care of as you're preparing to do your data cleanup. We want you to access the KReady system and download any kind of available reports in order to address the following things. As I just mentioned, transfers, also student scores and data. We want you to make sure that you have scores. If your teachers haven't entered scores yet, we certainly want you to be encouraging them, ensuring that they get those scores in and entered. And so if you go into the system and you see blanks, that's a perfect opportunity for you to reach out to those locations and encourage that they get the data entered. Likewise, teacher status. You may have some teachers that have transferred or moved out of the system and are no longer part of your location, and so you need to ensure that the teacher status is correct, whether that be active or inactive. We need to make sure that the enrollments are correct. If there are teacher changes, we need to make sure that those teachers that have been collecting scores are linked to those students. And so again, just going back and ensuring that those enrollments, the student and teacher linkages, are correct and active. And then ensure that you're using the correct data token, 3 ELA Spring 22. And then lastly, ensuring that the point of authority, or POA, has been set for your locations. Certainly for those locations that are using the bridge form, we are encouraging you to use local communication methods for ensuring that the data on the bridge form is correct, that's accurate prior to reporting the student data in EMIS or EAS. So again, wanting to make sure that you're working with your teachers that are using that bridge form and that they're going in and checking and making sure the right score is connected to the right student and that everything looks right as you, the data manager, are taking a look at the data prior to sending that to EAS or EMIS. Please note that while we continue to support the bridge form, we strongly encourage all locations to use the KReady system for reporting ELA scores and data. Again, there are some advantages and some features and functionalities that are available to you in the KReady system that are not just they're just not possible with the bridge form. And so we certainly want to encourage as many as possible to be using the KReady system for this process. Those of you that are using the KReady system, what you see highlighted here on the left, you're going to use almost every aspect of this, taking a look at the data collections, ensuring that your users are correct, ensuring that the students are correct in the system, that you've taken care of any transfers, that you're going into the bulk loader, downloading those reports so that you can check these kinds of things. You're going to be using a great portion of the KReady system. And so again, our role here is to kind of walk you through some of those items that you'll be using and talk with you about that so that you're comfortable and able to use those effectively. There are two types of transfers in the KReady system. The first is internal, and those are transfers obviously within the same district. So those transfers involve existing students. If you upload a new student ID, that's going to initiate a transfer in the system. You can also remove students from the original teacher when that transfer process occurs. So when you're in the system doing an internal transfer, it's really important that you understand that the internal transfers do not appear in the KReady system's transaction history. So external transfers, again, are those transfers that are happening from one district to another. That occurs when the student is loaded with the same ID. It's going to trigger a request. So that request from another district would come to you if that student is loaded in that district with that same ID. A district would then need to select transfers and go into the system to either approve or decline that transfer. If you receive that request, you would then select transfers to monitor the request. So if you have initiated a request, you can go into the KReady system and monitor whether or not the other district has approved or declined that transfer. If not, you can kind of reach out to them and vice versa. If they haven't received your approval or decline, they might be reaching out to you to get that taken care of. Again, these transfers will occur in the transaction history, and then after the transfer happens, that district that's receiving the student would need to set the POA or the point of authority. Student data may be collected while this is going on in both locations, while that request for pending transfer is occurring, but the POA will remain with the original district until that request has been approved. So it's really important that those are taken care of, especially for reporting purposes. Scores will be transferred once that approval has occurred and the correct data token is assigned to the student. And as I mentioned, this is what the transfer screen looks like in the KReady system. Here you see requests from other locations. So I've got here on this screen several transfers that have come in from other locations that I need to go in and approve. You also see a tab for transfers from that I've requested that may still be pending and that I'm waiting on a district to approve. And then, as I mentioned, that final tab is the transfer history. That's where you see the transaction between external districts. Again, going through those steps I just mentioned, again, you want to make sure as you're preparing for the close down that your student scores and data are correct. And that's whether you're using the bridge form or the KReady system. You want to go in and make sure that they are complete. And if there's any missing scores, that you go in and secure those, obtain those scores from the teachers. You also want to ensure that the teacher status is set, whether it needs to be active or inactive, depending upon where the teacher is in the flow. You need to make sure that that status is set for the teacher. You want to ensure that the enrollments are correct for students and that they're linked to the appropriate teachers. And then you need to make sure that you're using the correct data token. Again, it is 3 ELA Spring 22 for this current window. And then lastly, you want to ensure that the point of authority or POA has been assigned for that district that is going to be responsible for reporting the scores.
Reports you can pull for the early learning assessment. The first one here is the SKB ratings report. And this is going to show all your students in the program with all 72 SKBs listed in the top row. And then any ratings entered for those students will be listed underneath those. This report is going to show the entire ELA. So depending on your use of the tool, you may see data for all of the SKBs or just the required SKBs that are associated with those 10 learning progressions that are required for reporting. This can be pulled both during and after the collection window. If any scores are missing on this, we definitely encourage data managers reach out, communicate with those teachers that are associated with those specific students and provide any necessary support to just make sure that those scores, those ratings get entered into the KReady system. The second report you see here is the data downloads report. So this will show what data has been uploaded into the Ready for Kindergarten system for the current window. So this will let you compare data that is in the system to ensure any accuracy. So you're not going through each student one at a time. This report can also be pulled both during and after the collection window. The last report you see here is the ELA Learning Progression Report. And this report is what you are going to pull to submit that data to EMIS or EAS. And this report is going to show the learning progression ratings for the 10 required learning progressions. So these ratings are based on what was entered for the SKB that is within that learning progression. So this, again, is not going to be able to be pulled until after the data cleanup window and after, of course, the assessment closes. So once you are in the KReady system, go to reports, and we're going to start just in the line. We're going to go first one with that SKB ratings report. Select the drop-down ELA SKB ratings. Here you're going to go ahead and select your data collection. Then you see by default, the filter by point of authority is automatically checked. So when that's checked, only students whose point of authority is with that district will show on the report. If you uncheck, you're going to see students who have been loaded for the district, regardless of that student's point of authority. So this option is more intended for situations when a student is reported by 2 organizations. So we're just going to go ahead and keep that as default and check that off. You can check the box that says show observation dates of when those teachers entered any observation for those students. We're going to leave that unchecked. The start and end date. I always just do the actual start of the window and the close of the window. Now, location, this is going to provide results for specific buildings within your district. If you choose district, this is going to show all the buildings within that district. And if you select region, this is going to provide data managers with access to all of their districts. So if they have multiple districts they handle. So we are just going to do the district and select generate report. And you can see that the report has been successfully requested. That just did not want to close for me. Once that is done, select the download. All right, so now you're going to see the names of the students, all of their student information, then their teacher that they're associated with, and scores that have been entered. All right, so next one we want to show you is the data downloads. And again, this is more of that managerial report. So you just want to double check what has been entered into the system just to ensure that you have accurate information. So select the dropdown, go down to the bottom of the data downloads. Select your download type. Now this is one, the enrollments download type is that I want to show you, because this I feel is very important for the close down when it comes to for looking at all of your students here. Select your data collection, and you can again select the location or select the whole district. We're going to do the whole district. Close out of that. It's been requested. Select download. There's 2 columns I want to show you. Column M and column N. So active, whether the student is active. You see no's and you see yeses. A student is active when a teacher is associated with them. If there is no teacher, you're going to see that that student is not active. So that student will not show either on the teacher's roster, because there is none, nor will that student show on any reports at the end of the window or even during the window. These students just will not show. The second one is the point of authority. So we do see all of these have the point of authority of my district here. And at least these 4 down here, we do see a teacher is attached. So if you notice any of these up here, maybe Harry or Hermione need to have a teacher, you're going to want to go back into the system and make sure you assign that teacher to them so they show and they become active. So now the last one I just want to show you at least where to get it, we can't pull it yet, is going to be the ELA Learning Progression Report for EMIS. So again, you're going to go through, you can uncheck that box if you want to see all of the students loaded, or if you just are looking specifically for your district. You would then go ahead, generate your report when that becomes available. Again, it's not available yet until after the data cleanup window and after, of course, it closes. So our next one we want to go over here is the ELA reporting requirements for 2021-2022. So currently the reporting requirements for ODE and JFS license programs are for those ECE funded children and children receiving PSE services. And to meet the required, only the 10 learning progression is needed successfully to report. EMIS and EAS are the 2 main data systems that are used to collect that ELA data. ECE, PSE are the preschool education, and those, like I said, are those required 10 learning progressions. Ohio ODJFS license programs and non-public schools programs that serve ECE funded children report through EAS, and public schools that serve ECE funded children or PSE services report through EMIS. So here we see EMIS and EAS reporting. The EMIS reporting dates are available and found in that EMIS manual. EMIS date for the spring ELA deadline at this time is August 26, 2022. So again, this may change, so just always keep updated on that. EAS reported dates and directions on how to do that is in the link there. You see FY21, and this must be entered by June 30th. For the assessment for both the fall and the spring windows this year. Any questions regarding missing student scores, you want to reach out to the ELA help at education.ohio.gov.
To also just reiterate this piece about the reports, the most reliable way to verify that all students have complete scores is to take a look at that SKB report. Data managers and administrators can run these reports and identify whether all students have scores entered for all required SKBs. As a reminder, each student receiving PSE services, an ECE funded child or an ECE funded child must have a rating for 24 specific SKBs. So it's really important that that those scores are entered and that has been obtained and captured. So we're encouraging you to download those reports so you can find out the status right now today. Again, communicate with the buildings and the schools and the teachers if there's a need to get those scores entered. Again, we'll talk a little bit about supports. Hopefully, this should just be a refresher for you, but it's the Ohio Department of Education's website. The section on early learning. It's a great place to start for information regarding the assessments. There you'll find guidance on policy and procedures, as well as information that can assist you as an assessment data manager and others that are engaged in this assessment work. In addition to that, we have the Ohio K-12 Help, also known as the Help Desk support site. You can reach out to us by going to our website or by giving us a call at 844-K-12-OHIO or 844-512-6446. There on the site you can find all kinds of information, help files, videos, and resources designed to assist you as a data manager, as well as your teachers and administrators. There are some resources on our site for those particular audiences as well. Wanted to make sure that you are aware of a couple of things here on the site. So if you click the Ready for Kindergarten Online Support badge, it'll bring you to the main site. Again, you see the various roles that we're providing support materials for, and also some of the things that we're featuring on that page. So you can go to the Data Manager section. There are files and information specific to this particular period of the assessment. So you have the beginning of the assessment. So there's some training information and resources there that we feel that you need at the beginning of the assessment window, as well as managing. So during the assessment, while that's going on, there are some tools and resources there that we think are specific to that particular period, as well as the reporting period is kind of where we're at now as we're beginning to wind down. And I wanted to just point out that some of the things that were mentioned as it relates to reporting, like for instance, accessing the SKB report, there are some help files available. You can click on that link and it'll walk you through kind of a 1, 2, 3 of how to access that file. And that's also accompanied with a video. So there's a video that will walk you through those steps as well. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that there are always resources that you can kind of go back to and that you can use and get the details and get the information again. And likewise, how you can contact us. On the bottom of any of these pages, you can go to request support. Clicking that button will bring up another window that allows you to kind of select your location, identify where you're at, and clicking go will, let's see if I put in a district here. And click go. And then I can search for my location. I can then click submit a request for that location. Then we can start a ticket, if you will, or start a support request, and we can respond to that request for you. Again, we are racing to the end of this particular window. We've already gone through the first portion of that, right? As we mentioned, we did the data prep and loading webinar back in February. And so we're here at the Closedown webinar on May 3rd. Coming up would be the close of the actual window, which is happening at 11:59 p.m. on May 14th. And as mentioned, data managers will have until May 20th to complete their data cleanup process. Notifications will then be sent once the reports are available. So after May 20th, be on the lookout for a notification indicating that the LP, the learning progression reports, are available for you.
One of the questions was how to make a student inactive. Okay, so one of the questions was the student's no longer with you. You need to make that student inactive. What you want to do is remove the teacher-student association. And like I mentioned earlier, when you do that, that student will no longer show in reports. So I want to show you how to do that. So let's look at Dale, and we're going to go to the students. We're going to open over on that right-hand side. Here you see all the details for that student. You want to go to your enrollments tab, and we see that Lindsay is connected to the student. We want to remove that because this student's no longer here, no longer with this teacher. So we're just going to select remove. It's going to ask, are you sure? Select OK. And you can see that it's counting down in 10 seconds. And you also see that that student is no longer listed with having a teacher. So now when you go to pull the SKB report, this student is not going to show. So I just want to show you real quick, and we'll pull it for the spring here. But just to, making sure you always just double checking and make sure that that student isn't there. Go, it's been generated. So we're going to download, and we're going to see that Dale is no longer there. So we see Lindsay only has one student now, and she just has Chip. There's one here asking, can you show how to add a student? You can do this two ways. You can do it through the bulk loader by doing that student file, then enrollment file. You can do it manually as well. If you want to go to your bulk loader and you just want to select your template, get your student template, you're going to do a student and enrollment template. The template is going to load all the student information. The enrollment file is the important one because that is what is going to connect the student not only to the teacher, but also the assessment. So that way, the spring assessment, the student's going to show in that assessment for that teacher. So you're going to want to do both of those. If you're looking to add a student manually, if you go to your organizations on the left-hand side, select View Districts, select View Locations, and select View Students. From here, this is where you would add a student manually. You would enter in their information, and you would hit Save and Open. And then from there, When you save and open that student you just added, you're going to see a little more information. So doing it manually, make sure you add the data collection assignment. Make sure you add the teacher. And then you are done. That teacher, reach out to that teacher, double check with them, and make sure that they can see the student in their roster.
Question asking, how do you add a new teacher?
Okay, we're going to do the same thing with adding the student. You're going to go to your bulk loader. You're going to want to select your templates, and you want to select your teacher file. From here, you can do required or all fields. Honestly, just do all fields. It's, very easy. Put in the information of your teacher, their teacher credential ID, which is always going to be 2 letters and 7 digits. You can also use your email, the teacher's email for it as well. Those are the 2 that are allowed for when it comes to the teacher credential ID in the KReady system. Add them through the bulk loader is the surefire way. Make sure when you do that it comes back and it'll say updates and it'll say complete. So that way that teacher has been added. If you go to your users, you can add it manually as well. You would put in the information, put in the initial location of where that teacher is. But here is what on this one, you would set the password for the teacher instead of them doing it. Bulk loader is the best way to go when you're adding a teacher. I do see a question that states, when are the reports updated? Do changes show overnight or do they happen immediately? On that particular one, what I always suggest is over 24 hours. Give it 24 hours once you do a change, and just ensure that things have been updated. After 24 hours is over and it's still not updated, then reach out to us and we can see what the issue might be. But at least give it 24 hours to update if it doesn't happen immediately.
Question about the student attending a private school, and if the student is no longer receiving services, you're wondering if you should remove the teacher, and you can do that. But the next question, will the private school request a transfer? That will be dependent upon, is that child receiving preschool special education services now at another school? Is that private school an ECE grantee recipient, or is that school using the early learning assessment at all? If that private school is not using the early learning assessment because they're not required to, then they might not add that student and you would not receive a transfer request in that case. It just depends on if that school is required to use the assessment. And somebody just asked about the purpose of archiving frequently. We actually only archive once a year. The archive is done yearly at the end of the year.
If a student left a private school and went to a public school, do we still have to make them inactive?
Right. If a student is no longer in your school, then you can make them inactive. It doesn't matter, where they go. If they end up going somewhere during the school year and that new school loads the student, then you would get a transfer request. But if they don't go anywhere, then you won't.
So I can answer this next question. Should all my preschool gen ed students who receive itinerant services have both teachers listed on the enrollment? And that is completely a local decision. And I would say it depends on if both teachers will be contributing to collecting the early learning assessment data, then it would absolutely make sense to have them both listed on the enrollment. But if one teacher is going to be the lead in terms of being responsible for inputting all of that data, then you could just have one teacher. So it really is a local decision that you can make based on how your programs operate. And it may be different from class to class too. It doesn't have to be the same for all of your programs.